Hi YouTubers, welcome back to Vintage Fashion Hat Chat. Here we are on the other side of Christmas, and I promised you if I got new hats I would show them to you. I didn't get any, even though they were on my wish list. Didn't get the puppy either. But that doesn't mean we don't have hats to talk about. I don't have any new ones, so I will talk about some real special oldies. If you're new here, I'm Norma Shepherd, the director of the Mobile Millinery Museum and the author of 5 books on vintage fashion, including 1,000 hats. So I've pulled 4 from the archives today that are quite old, and I will talk about them. The first one, we're going back to the 1860s. This is a very iconic 1860s Sun Bonnet. You can see that it has seen better days, but I pulled this one for a few reasons. This is very stiff and quite brittle, but it has survived, let's face it, about a century and a half. And so considering that, and the fact that it was really, although it was, covered in silk and rather dressy, even if it was only worn perhaps on Sundays, it still took a beating from the sun and from wear and maybe even from storage. We don't really know, how the original owners or subsequent owners stored the hat, but you can see that the silk has some water staining on it, but still the basic shape is intact, and it's a really good study piece. Now you can see how deep, almost the hand breadth, and how deep this brim is. It is satin covered, probably some type of cardstock, very, very stiff. And of course, this would come out to shade you from the sun. The crown part where your most of your head sits back in here. You wonder how were they able to look left or right? Your peripheral would definitely be disadvantaged. But the stiffening is pleated, and so is the silk satin that covers it. Now this part of the hat at the back is called a bavalet, and these were sometimes shallow like this, or they were very, very long, very deep. It depended sometimes on the prevailing fashion, but also depending where you lived and how practical you needed it to be. This was to shade the back of your neck so that you did not get a sunburn. So let's look at some of the decorative elements. I do want to show you the underneath area of the bavalet. This would not receive any sun, of course, so it is not faded like the rest. And you can see what a lovely, almost a taupey shade this is. You can also see the ruching of the fabric that was hand done. And this stitching in concentric lines along the border was a little decorative touch, and these are tiny, tiny little hand stitches. Now we only have one tie remaining. The other has completely disappeared, but you can still see that it was silk ribbon made into a bow. Of course, it is watermarked and deteriorating, shredding, as well as so much of the early silks did. They were treated with mineral salts to add some sheen and some weight, and of course it's destroyed the tissues over time. There's a little very, very old hook you can see there, and so this is how the ties were secured under the chin. So the bow, this is half a bow really, would meet the other half on the other side, and of course this other ribbon is completely lost and gone. Many of these Victorian bonnets had different lengths of ties, and sometimes they were asymmetrical and one quite a bit longer, in which case you would tie it up over on the side. So that's a feature that's rather interesting. The lining has definitely deteriorated. There are only very small remnants of silk lining remaining attached, And then this is like a very early buckram at the back. So that is one very old piece to show you today. Now another one. This one is early 20th century, very, very early. This is no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Thinking of another hat while talking about this one. Silly me. Okay, so late 19th century. This one is what we call a sugarloaf hat, and it gets its name from the shape of the crown, and this is a nod to colonialism. Sugar originally was packed in these cone-shaped molds for distribution, and you could purchase it by weight and size. This is a very, very natural straw that's been plaited, and then it has been sewn in concentric circles to make this terrific shape. It definitely shows the hand of a skilled milliner. The banding is, I just love it. It comes to a V in the back, just under this upturned brim. And in the front, crosses over, coming to a point as well. And then the self fabric, this actually is, oh, listen to that crinkle. I should be careful. Oh my gosh. I love a hat that also has sound. This is an early leather, which obviously is very, very brittle at the moment. But a really sweet hat, an early, fabric covered elastic to create a chignon strap at the back. This would be tilted forward when worn, and I'm sure you can easily find old fashion plates showing the ladies in this style of hat. Now moving forward into the Edwardian era, so early 20th century, this is the hat I was thinking of when I misspoke. We have this very crown-like piece, which I think is spectacular. The banding is completely covered in sequins, gives it lots of shine and sparkle. This hat would have been owned by someone very wealthy, perhaps a socialite. The crown is black velvet. And this raised brim, folded up and raised brim, I'm actually going to push down the crown so that you can see the workmanship in this stand-up brim. And that is a very fine lace that is secured to a wire frame, very typical in that era. And then it is rimmed in ermine, which is wired. Terrific piece. And then we have, of course, the final flourish of these black aigrettes. There is a silk lining, which is still in wonderful condition, and printed on the silk lining is the label, the maker's mark, Henry Morgan and Company, Colonial House, Montreal. So there's a nod, an unabashed nod to colonialism back before it was, it had acquired a different connotation today, of course, in view of the history of our Aboriginal peoples. But a stunning, stunning piece. I think we showed this at an exhibit we did in 2019 of Titanic era fashions. Now, the last hat I want to show you today is another old piece, and it's quite a lovely gentleman's smoking cap. Now, these were very ubiquitous in the Victorian era, particularly in Britain. You think of those old homes without central heating, and the gentleman would retire for a smoke following dinner, perhaps in a drafty room, often wearing a wool or a velvet smoking jacket. Now the ladies often made and embroidered or made or embroidered these pillbox shaped smoking caps. So this is beautifully done in silks, and they were often embroidered in nature scenes of flowers or birds. And then of course you have the wonderful silk tassel and this button that punctuates the center crown. I have shown these while we were still being able to do our retrospective millinery fashion shows in person before COVID. And some young audiences were quite taken with these, and some girls were wanting to purchase these smoking caps to wear, like as a fancy little hat with a pair of blue jeans or something, which is kind of a cool idea. But no, we've kept these in the archives. So, and the women would embroider them and give them to their fiancés or their husbands as a gift. So those are the oldies I wanted to show you today. Something else old, of course, but fairly new to me is the Poinsettia Necklace. And I do collect vintage jewelry. This is a piece that I quite enjoy. It's from the 70s. It is... the label is Coldwater Creek, and it's a Coldwater Creek that was made in Canada. And these were very well made, late 1970s. And this particular one is just a real treat. So that's what I have for you today. You know, we have a whole new year of possibilities to look forward to. So at some point, I hope to bring you some video of a new puppy, and of course new hats, and hats of course that are not so new but will be new to me, and there's lots to look forward to. In the meantime, I will continue to show you pieces from our existing archive, posting Mondays and Thursdays, and I wish you all a very happy day.